Hello class, Mr. Fino here. This is Unit 8, Lesson 1 on the geography and the early development of Rome. So in this lesson, we will learn how the Etruscans and Greeks influenced the development of Rome. So what you need to know for the civilization of Rome is it started out as a city, right? A city in modern day Italy. And Italy, as you can see here, is a peninsula and a series of islands in southern Europe. And it's shaped a lot like a boot. You can see here a boot with a heel here and the toe pointed towards the island of Sicily. So yeah, and you can see here some of the groups that were around this region at the time. All right, so I'm going to start with a story. It's a myth. It's a Roman myth about the founding of their city. So here's how the story goes. Long ago, the story explains, a princess gave birth to twin sons, Romulus and Remus. Here they are here. And the boy's father was Mars, the Roman god of war. And the princess's uncle, who was the king, was afraid the boys would grow up to take his throne. So he ordered his men to drown them in the Tiber River. So, so you can see in the background here, ordering to, drown them, and here someone's taking them away. However, before the twins were drowned, a wolf rescued them. So here you see a statue, which is a common statue found all over the place, of Romulus and Remus being nursed by the she-wolf. When Romulus and Remus grew up, they decided to construct a town on the banks of the Tiber River where the wolf had found and saved them. However, in a quarrel or a fight over who would rule the new settlement, Romulus killed his brother Remus, and he became king of the city, which he named Rome after himself. Romulus, Rome. All right, so that's a myth. In actuality, it went a little bit different. So let's start with the question, who were the first people to live around Rome? And so there were several groups that invaded Italy before 1000 BCE, so about, 3,022 years ago. But the Latins were the first to live in the area around Rome. So you can see here where it says Latium. That's the green area is where the Latins ruled, right? And around 700 BCE, a Latin tribe built a village that eventually became Rome. So it started off a village and then it grew. The village was built on the Palatine, a hill overlooking the Tiber River. And here's a picture of the Palatine today. So which civilizations influenced Roman culture? So we have the Etruscans, right, who ruled much of Italy north of Rome, which we saw in the previous slide. I guess I can go back real quick. So the Etruscans were the orange area north of Rome, and then the Greeks ruled the southern part of Italy, which we'll see here. So again, the Etruscans ruled much of Italy north of Rome, and by 600 BCE, the Etruscans actually took control of the city of Rome, or the village to city of Rome. And the Greeks established city-states south of Rome and on the island of Sicily. So Etruscans, Greeks, in the south of Italy, as well as Sicily, the island of Sicily. All right, so first we're going to look at the influence of Etruscan engineering. So the Romans became excellent builders, learning many engineering techniques from the Etruscans. Engineering is the science of building. And the two most important Etruscan structures were the arch and the Cuniculus, right, which we'll get into detail on those two things in a second. So first, Etruscan arches were made of a half circle of wedge-shaped stones with a keystone in the center and two pillars on the bottom. So if we're looking at this here, here's the half circle of wedge-shaped stones. Here's the keystone in the center that kind of held them together and put pressure on them to stay. and you've got two pillars here on the bottom, right? And the Romans used arches to build huge public works, things like bridges and stadiums, which you can see here, a Roman bridge with arches, right? And then here's a small model of the Colosseum. You can see arches all throughout the Colosseum. Then we have the Cuniculus, which was an underground trench that was connected to vertical shafts. So kind of think of it like sort of like plumbing. If you think about like sewers and stuff today. So these were used for irrigation, for draining swamps, and distributing water. That's the uses of the Cuniculus. And eventually, the Romans designed aqueducts to carry water over large distances. So here's a picture of an aqueduct, and then here's a diagram kind of showing how an aqueduct might have worked. You can see water flowing from the main source. It's going to continue flowing. Vertical air shafts, a bridge structure for crossing low areas. You can see the water continuing through. But the Romans were able to deliver water over large distances. Next, we have the influence of Etruscan sporting events. So the Romans adapted two bloody sporting events of the Etruscans. The first of which was at Etruscan funerals, in which two slaves of the dead master who died were to fight to the death with swords and small shields. Essentially, I think this was entertainment, but it also represented them, these people, their master is dead, so they were likely going to die too. And what was unfortunate was the winner was congratulated. Yay, good job, you killed this other slave, but then they were executed. So pretty shady. This Etruscan sort of slave fighting developed into Roman gladiator fighting. So the Romans developed this into gladiator fighting, where thousands of professionally trained fighters battled each other, as you see here, to the death, or they fought wild animals, like you see in this image here. Etruscans also enjoyed chariot races, in which the charioteers or the drivers were strapped to their chariots. So this was extremely dangerous because they went really, really fast, and if they were strapped to their chariots, so if they crashed and the chariot overturned, they could be dragged under the chariot's wheels or trampled by the horses, and these competitions often resulted in injury or death. But the Etruscan chariot races developed into Roman chariot races with huge four-horse teams like you see here. Next, we have the influence of Greek architecture, right? The design of buildings. So the Romans used Greek designs in their own public buildings. The Romans made buildings of marble, as you see here, and utilized columns. Like you can see, this looks like a very shiny marble building with columns, right? These long structures holding up the building. And the Romans eventually used concrete to build massive structures like the Pantheon in Rome. And then the Colosseum was a massive stadium where gladiators fought. And lastly, the Circus Maximus hosted chariot races with 200,000 spectators. So let's take a look at some of these Roman accomplishments in architecture. So first we have, this is the Pantheon, right? So you can see, again, many of the same Greek influences. You've got columns, and then you see inside there's a dome, which this is an artist rendering, but you can see the dome kind of in the background, and then this is what it would have looked like inside. You've got here the Colosseum, which is a very popular place for people to visit in Rome today, in the city of Rome. So it's just the ruins today, but you can see here what it would have looked like thousands of years ago with spectators there for the gladiator fights. And then we have the Circus Maximus, which was where it held 200,000 spectators went to watch chariot races. So ruins are here, and then here is a rendering of what it looked like. We have the influence of Greek writing. So the Romans used the Greek alphabet by way of the Etruscans. So what that means is the Etruscans learned the Greek alphabet, and then the Romans took that from the Etruscans. You can see here some of these alphabets, the Etruscans here, and you can see similarities in how the letters look. Both the Romans and the Greeks wrote in all capital letters. The Greeks carved laws and treaties into plaques, which were displayed in public squares. And then the Romans did something similar. They carved inscriptions in walls and columns for all to see, so they could read the laws and stuff out in the open. And then, unrelated to the letters themselves, but many Roman writers were inspired by Greek poetry and myths. Specifically, one writer was the Roman poet Virgil, who expanded on the Greek-Trojan War story in the Aeneid. All right. Next, we're talking about the influence of Greek art. So both the Romans and Etruscans imitated and collected Greek pottery, paintings, and sculptures. So here we have some Greek pottery. It's got the classic sort of red clay, black paint. So Greek potters created large vessels for storing food, water, and wine. And Greek pottery used red clay and black paint, showing gods, heroes, or even everyday people, as you see in these images. Roman art of this era is often referred to as Greco-Roman art because of the massive Greek influence. So it's Roman art, but it had such a massive Greek influence, they call it Greco-Roman art. Greek statues tried to replicate a perfect human being or god. So the Greeks made statues that they tried to make like perfect. They tried to make them look like, wow, that's a specimen, right? Whereas the Romans focused more on realism, creating lifelike and life-size portraits, busts, which a bust is like the head and shoulders, and the statues of their leaders. So here's some examples of Roman art. A couple of busts here and here. Here's a portrait. But looking at this guy is not, classically beautiful like a lot of the statues you'll see in Greece. It's more realistic to who he was. And lastly, we have the influence of Greek religion. So Roman religion borrowed from Etruscan rituals for like establishing cities and stuff, and the pantheon of Greek gods. So the Roman gods, they had their own gods as well, but most of their gods came directly from the Greeks. So the Greeks, they also like to, explain things with stories and myths. The Romans didn't really care about that so much. They were more focused on performing specific rituals to their gods and goddesses for specific things. And the Romans changed the names of their gods and goddesses. For example, Zeus became Jupiter, as you see here. Aphrodite became Venus, and Ares became Mars. But you can see all the examples here as well, and a lot of these are modern day planets, right? But the Romans took from the Greek gods. And so in this lesson, we learned how the Etruscans and Greeks influenced the development of Rome. All right, thank you.